Hello everyone, this is Gene and I'm back with another video. I hope you're all doing well on this Sunday, or at least here for me in New York City it's Sunday. It might be a different day for you depending on which part of the world you're on. But wherever you are, whether it's day or night, I hope you're well. I've noticed that my subscriber count has ticked up a little bit. I'm guessing that NetherRealm video took off. As always, if you're new, I hope that you continue to enjoy the content. And if you're not new, I hope you continue to enjoy the content. So today's video is a bit spur of the moment, but it's something that I've been wanting to, I guess, talk about for a while. And I guess this is as good a time as ever, which is Wonder Woman and her supposed bisexuality. Now, the reason I bring this up is because apparently Gal Gadot and I think Kristin Wiig, who play Wonder Woman and Cheetah in the Wonder Woman 1984 film that's supposed to be coming out at some point, who knows with the coronavirus, but apparently they were asked if their characters were going to have a queer romance or whatnot. Here's what the article from News 18 said. Says, asked whether Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, and Barbara Ann Minerva, Cheetah, were on a date during a scene that appeared in the trailer, Wiig questioned, "Oh, for a lesbian thing?" Gadot or Gadot, can someone please tell me how to say her name? Then teased, "The sexual tension is always there. I can tell you that." Right, so it looks like they're trying to tease a little something here, although, to be fair, director Patty Jenkins, according to an article from Heroic Hollywood, has shot that theory down, saying this. Let me just find it. It says here, while Patty Jenkins did shut down the fan theory, she also suggested, there we go, as she was thinking about having a romance between the two. And here are Patty's comments. It might have happened in a different storyline, but because this storyline was so clearly about Steve, of course Steve Trevor, played by Chris Pine, coming back, the whole story was about Steve. It's all a love story with Steve. There wasn't room for Diana. So no doubt that is going to get under some people's skin. Wonder Woman being in love with a man? And only a man? Oh no, I can already see some outrage warriors getting upset. But having read these two articles, it made me actually go back and look up the history of Wonder Woman's bisexuality. And if you follow comics, you might remember that I think in 2015 or 2016, author Greg Rucka, this was back when they were doing Rebirth at the time, so it was a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. And he confirmed that, right, canonically speaking, that Wonder Woman was bisexual. Right. His basic reasoning was that, more or less, that because she grew up in Paradise, on Paradise Island, also known as Themyscira, and that one second. Sorry, as I was saying, right, his reasoning was that because it's Paradise, it's Themyscira, right, that she would have been raised with the idea. Here's exactly what he says, right? He says, it's supposed to be paradise. You're supposed to be able to live happily. You're supposed to... Oh, this article. One second. Here we go. Let me start over. My computer is just not working with me today, people. I'm sorry. But anyway, it says here, it's supposed to be paradise. Of course, these are Greg Rucka's comments. You're supposed to be able to live happily. You're supposed to be able, in a context where one can live happily, and part of what an individual needs for that happiness is to have a partner, to have a fulfilling romantic and sexual relationship. And the only options are women. But an Amazon doesn't look at another Amazon and say, you're gay. They don't. The concept doesn't exist. Now look, I have no issue with the idea of Wonder Woman being a bisexual. Heck, she's one of the few characters where I think it actually would make sense in a certain degree. But here's the problem I've always had with Rucka's reasoning on this. To me, what he's pretty much saying here is that she would have been raised this way, that her environment, right, what she grew up around, witnessing, seeing, would determine her sexuality, right? He says here that to have a fulfilling romantic and sexual relationship, you need that to be happy. Not everyone needs that to be happy, but yes, generally speaking, most people do and desire that. And then it says here, and the only options are women. Greg, that is not how sexuality works. Just because you grow up in a family or a society that predominantly practices one type of sexuality or orientation does not mean you yourself will be that orientation. Ask any gay person or any person who simply is not straight, whether they're gay, lesbian, bi, pan, asexual, anything else. Simply ask someone who is not straight as an arrow, right, about their childhood and about what they grew up around. I would imagine that a vast majority of them would say that they grew up in a predominantly straight family or straight culture, right, whether it was their family, what they were seeing on TV, what they were surrounded by, family, friends, teachers, students, whatever it is. Growing up in a predominantly straight society, right, does not automatically mean that you yourself will be straight. You don't learn straightness, right, from other people. Same way you don't learn gayness or bisexuality or any other non-heterosexuality from being raised or growing up in a predominantly LGBTQ friendly neighborhood or parents or society. For example, there are people who grow up in cities like, say, San Francisco, which is long known in America at least for being very LGBTQ friendly. New York is another example. Or people who are interested in theater or whatnot, and they have jokes and they have funny stories about being like the one straight person in the room, right? Or having to come out to their friends as heterosexual, right? So whether it's being non-hetero and growing up in a hetero world, right, whatever constitutes your world, your existence, or whether it's sort of the reverse and you're the only straight person in a very LGBTQ friendly life or a situation or whatever, your own personal sexuality, your own personal sexual identity and orientation is not going to be determined by others. If you could just learn a certain sexual orientation, then you probably would not have a lot of people who are not straight, because the vast majority of people of humanity is either straight or straight leaning. Otherwise, we wouldn't have 8-some billion people on Earth. Right, so that's not how sexuality works. Just because you grow up surrounded by people of a certain orientation or you see certain practices, right, does not mean that you yourself are going to be gay. You cannot raise a person to be gay. You can't raise a person to be straight. As any gay person who grew up with straight parents and straight friends will happily tell you, the orientation of their family and friends did not change their own orientation. That's not something you can raise in a person. So that's one of the big reasons why I've always had an issue with Greg Rucka's she was raised in a certain environment argument. You can learn a lot from an environment. And I think that certainly growing up in on a female-only world where when there was sexual activity, it would have only been between women, would certainly make Wonder Woman more open, just in a general sense, to the idea of it, or the idea of same-sex love or whatnot. That I understand, right? But that doesn't mean she herself is going to practice that or be interested in it. It just means that she is more likely than not to be more open or comfortable with the idea because it's what she was raised around and it would have been considered normal given her circumstances. But that doesn't automatically mean she herself would engage in it. She, again, they're officially now that saying that she's bi, but again, as I said, being raised around a certain type of person or people doesn't automatically mean you're going to share in their sexual identity and sexual orientation. And especially when you take into account the fact that women were the only option. As he says here, he says the only option are women. I would say, and this might catch me a little heat, but I would say that it's maybe somewhat comparable to prison sex in that it's less about personal choice or orientation and more about if you're going to have sex, if you're going to have sexual relations, having those relations with the people who are available as opposed to having them with the person or with the type of person you would want, right? That's the best way I can put it, right? It's like say you're, I don't know, trapped in your house, right? And the only thing you've got to eat is bread. Maybe you're not the biggest fan of bread, but it's either eat bread or go to bed hungry. I would say at least 8 times out of 10, you're probably going to elect to eat the bread because as much as you may not like bread, it's better than going to bed hungry, right? So there's another example. So I've never been quite comfortable just as a reader with this idea of Wonder Woman is bi because she was raised on Themyscira. And the idea of paradise, well, here's the thing. Paradise is going to be different for every person. For example, I could not live on Themyscira. I couldn't. I'd be the first person jumping back in the water, trying to swim away. I would probably drown. And you know why? Because for me, the idea of paradise is not an all-woman island. For me, that's hell. This is why I lived in fear as a little girl of being sent to like an all-girls school. For me, I cannot thrive in that type of environment, in that type of situation. I don't do well in all-girl groups or things of that nature. I'm too much of a tomboy for all that stuff. I've been through it as a little kid. I don't do well in those type of situations. I can get along with women, but I can't exist in a space, at least not well. I cannot exist well in a space where it's all women, there's no men around. No, I can't do it. I've been in all girl spaces. I feel weird. I get aggravated. I can't do it. For me, I need men around. So for me, Themyscira would not be paradise. Themyscira would be, for me, hell. It's like if somebody wanted to like damn me to a hell for eternity, put me on Themyscira. That is hell from my perspective. Paradise for me would be an island, of men and women, or maybe slightly more men than women in my case. So the point is that paradise is different for each person, right? And just because, even if everything else is perfect, that doesn't automatically mean that Wonder Woman is going to be attracted to other women, right? Given her situation, she might feel an attraction that she doesn't exactly know how to identify or explain until she meets Steve Trevor, until she actually encounters a man. And I think for me, that's the big point, the big takeaway. I don't think anybody can really, and here's the thing, sexuality is a very personal, complex, complicated thing. But I don't think anybody can ascertain what type of sexual orientation they are, right? What makes them feel comfortable when it comes to the ideas of sex and love and marriage and family and whatnot, until you have the option of men and women, right? If you want to say now that she's had experience with males and females, right? Now that she's interacted with men, grown up with women, now that she has experience with both and a choice, now she can choose whether she's going to have a life with Steve or with some other guy. I've always been a Wonderbat shipper myself, or whether she's going to again have a relationship with a woman or neither or whatever, right? Now you can actually explore that choice now that men and women are on the table, now that she's been exposed to men and to women. But I don't think prior to that you could really explore that, because it's like, well, all she's ever known is girls. How do you know what she likes until you expose her to men, to the male side of things? So that's the way I see it. So yeah, I think I'm just kind of like rambling at this point. I just wanted to just cover this, given that Gal and Kristin were teasing a potential queer romance, and then Patty shut that down and said, nope, this is a love story between Wonder Woman and Steve. But long story short, the point of this video is you cannot be raised to be a certain sexual orientation, right? And every person's idea of paradise is going to be different. I have rambled on long enough, and I think I've kind of lost the plot. But anyway, please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good weekend, everybody. Bye.